So good, so good, so good.
Give big, save big with Rack Friday deals at Nordstrom Rack. For a limited time, take an extra 40% off red tag clearance for a total savings up to 75% off. Save on gifts for everyone on your list from brands like Vince, Cole Haan, Sam Edelman, and more. All sales final and restrictions apply. The best stuff goes fast, so bring your gift list and your wish list to your nearest Nordstrom Rack today.
At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
For those who know that questioning everything includes questioning this show's existence. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Deep friendships often fade when boys become men, and the cost on those men is enormous. Why do we choke off vulnerability, blur intimacy, and call it strength? Why are men lonely without their childhood friends? That is what we're going to unpack here with Sam Eagan, who's recently written on this. He's a reporter, a producer, a researcher. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, David.
So, your own story. Did you have a lot of close friendships growing up that kind of faded into adulthood?
I actually kind of had a different experience, I think, than what I write about being kind of maybe not universal but common. In this piece, I had a pretty sort of reclusive family, and I didn't have a ton of. I grew up in Salt Lake City originally, and didn't have a ton of. I got a few friends, but didn't have a ton of really, really, really close friends. And then I found, kind of for the first time in my life, like really close friendships. Actually, in college, I was a Division I wrestler. And it was like I shipped off to the University of Wyoming, and it was the first time in my life that I was around 30 other guys who were like obsessed with this very niche sport and loved it as much as I did. And if you're playing a Division I sport, it's not like high school sports. It's just like you're training for 6 hours a day. You live together. You train together. You study together. You live like it's around each other 24/7 all the time. So like that was kind of the first experience that I had with like having really, really, really close friends. And it was interesting because it was very intimate, but it felt like it had been bought through this, like, wrestling is a very violent sport. It's very intense. It like revolves around this sort of culture of like domination and like beating people up and what you'd call like putting the pace on people, like wrestling them so hard that they get tired and their mind breaks. And it's like very like it's the most miserable sort of suffering oriented sport there is. You have the weight cutting. And it felt like I had like bought this like access to intimacy with these other men through like our shared suffering together.
I mean, that can be a great way to bond. And then, of course, the sport being, I guess, the stereotype of what we think of masculinity.
Indeed, it's certainly very, I think, homoerotic. And I think some of the like posturing around the violence of it was kind of like compensating for that, I would say.
Whenever I have professional athletes on, I always ask them about the locker rooms and stuff. Like, sports to me is very homoerotic, but I think that's a conversation for perhaps another time.
I was shocked once I left that environment and I moved to New York. And I was just like, I don't see other men naked anymore, ever. Like, I saw 30 men naked every single day, and now I never see it. It's
a tragedy, really.
A true tragedy, yeah.
Did those friendships fade after, like, university, college, after you were in that world?
I wouldn't say they faded, but I moved here. I was like, I really want to be a journalist. I'm in New York. I moved to New York. I really wanted to be a journalist really badly. And what I found was, like, without access to that, like, environment of, like, this really intense sort of trauma bonded environment, like maybe the first 2 or 3 years I lived here, I was like really, really lonely. And I was really angry as a byproduct of it.
Interesting. Say more about that.
I think I'm still unpacking why I was so angry, but I think I felt like I hadn't accomplished what I was supposed to have accomplished when competing at the Division I level. I was a pretty good high school wrestler and then like an okay college athlete. And I had a lot of like, regrets around my sort of lack of perceived achievement, which I think a lot of men can connect to. And I was like, I had no money. I didn't have any friends. I was like leaning really hard on, I remember there was a point where I was just going like hinge dates every 3 or 4 days because I had like nothing to do. I didn't really know anybody. And I found myself like really intensely leaning on like dating and like romantic partners and kind of just going through like series, like 2 or 3 month situationship, a 2 or 3 month situationship, and they were like really intense, and I was like very angry, and then they inevitably broke down because they were like, you're really angry and unpleasant to be around. And then I've worked to kind of like unpack that now. And I was like, oh, maybe I need to make some friends. Years ago, like one of the sort of piece that I did that launched my career was like, I've kind of come full circle with this piece with the Globe and Mail. I did a documentary for Vice, which was the title was something to the effect of like, why the hell is it so hard to make friends for a man?
Baked in that is that connection between rage and loneliness. Like, why the hell,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I just like in a very like verite like style, like documented myself throughout the day, like trying to make a new friend who was a guy. And it like kind of like the first time that I had like intellectualized this experience of like the kind of inherent uncomfortability for a lot of men, certainly not all men, but I think a pretty large subsection of men, the inherent uncomfortability with the vulnerability it requires to be like, hey, I don't know anybody. I'm lonely. Do you
want to hang out with me?
Do you want to hang out with me? Which is like, do you want to connect with me? And that like there's a deep vulnerability in that is like very terrifying, especially if you've kind of been conditioned to never sort of be vulnerable. Certainly the way that I was conditioned, or to just sort of never be vulnerable, and it was hard to do, but it was certainly illuminating. Yeah.
And of course, there's this temptation of the manosphere online that just kind of like perpetuates the masculinity, a way to feel powerful again. I don't know if it's the right place for men to be turning.
No, it's definitely not. And I think that a lot of what I always say about the manosphere is that like ultimately these people are like selling what they latch onto, rightly so, is the sort of misogynistic stuff. Andrew Tate is obviously a alleged sex trafficker. This hyper conservative stuff, but like what it starts with at its root is like self-help content. It's like they are selling men this idea that like you will feel better if you do this thing, and the Andrew Tates of the world are saying if you return to a sort of like strange pseudo traditional, because it's still really not, version of like hyper masculinity, like you will feel better about yourself. And it's a farce. It's a fantasy.
So what do you recommend from your own journey to people that are lonely? Moving to a new city is something I did. I've done it 3 times in my life. Sorry, 2 times, 3 cities. I was in my first city. Not important. That first year or 2 can be very lonely, especially when you're single. What do you recommend to people from your story who kind of are struck by your journey?
I think that it is, you really just need to just ask. It's frustrating how simple the advice is. And it's really just that you need to just like ask. Like, you will be surprised how many people I think just like genuinely just want to have connection in their lives. How people don't feel like they have that, especially younger people. And like being willing to take the sort of like leap and putting yourself out there. Like I when I first started doing it, it felt like I was like pouring lava on my head or something. It was so deeply painful, but I don't think twice about it now. And it's everybody kind of wants and craves connection. And I think you'll be really surprised how receptive people are if you could just take the leap to be like, do you want to hang out?
There are people willing to take the leap and invest the energy and drive and courage to like, work out or do this, that, and the other. Why not do it when it comes to friend making? Why not say to the person that you casually know, hey, do you want to hang out sometime? It's even good to be rejected because then you realize that's not a big deal at all.
It's just so it feels so much safer, I think, to lean on the sort of like hyper individualism. And this is why so much manosphere content revolves around fitness. It's like you're leaning on the last thing that you have control over yourself that nobody can take from you, no matter what, is your body. You can live in the most evil, hyper capitalist society imaginable, and they can,
like the United States. Sorry, and that was
sure. And they still, as of now at least, can't take your body from you fully. And so it's like part of why I think that's why people lean on like the fitness stuff so much, because there is not none, but there's far less inherent vulnerability to that. It's even though it might feel harder to wake up at 5 a.m. and go for a run and lift twice a day than it is to like ask someone to go get lunch with you. It's easier in some ways, I think. And it certainly feels a lot less scary for some people.
And the idea of being vulnerable like that as being coded as feminine, something not for men to do, is kind of wild to me, but some people do believe that.
It's fun. Like I read this in the piece. I remember when you say that, it makes me think about something that we would like talk about a lot in the wrestling room at the university I went to, was like the worst thing that you could be, like the ultimate insult, was to be like a victim. It's like if you like let somebody beat you up, if you let someone sort of like impose their will on you and like throw you around in a match, you're being a victim. And which is like there's an inherent sort of like feminine aspect to that. It's like the worst thing you can do is like open yourself up to like violence, whether it's physical or spiritual or emotional. So you're just kind of like forced, like hemmed into this like wall of like emotional armor.
Well, Sam Eagan's piece is called Deep Friendships Often Fade When Boys Become Men. We need a cultural shift for the good of us all. You can read that in the Globe and Mail. Sam Eagan is a reporter, a producer, a researcher. Sam, I've appreciated the chat. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Rinse takes your laundry and hand delivers it to your door, expertly cleaned and folded. So you could take the time once spent folding and sorting and waiting to finally pursue a whole new version of you. Like Tea Time You. Or this Tea Time You. Or even this Tea Time You.
Said you hear about Dave?
Or even Tea Time You.
So update on Dave.
It's up to you. We'll take the laundry. Rinse. It's time to be great.